Welcome to another episode with the Power of a Growth Mindset. Today we have very special guest on our show today, and I'm excited about this episode because today and this month we are honoring International Women's Month. But the purpose of this episode is one, to help our audience understand that it's important to celebrate women 365 days, and if it's a leap year, 366 days of the year. So I'm welcome everyone to our show. I'm excited about this opportunity to be able to collaborate with all of you in community. And before we get started, I would just like our panel to introduce themselves, and we can go ahead and start with whoever would like to go first.
Hi, I am Dr. Christa Washington, and I am a professor of psychology at the Chicago School of Professional Psychology. And I also do consulting work around leadership development for STEM leadership in higher education.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Washington.
Hi, my name is Ashley Seeley. I work across companies and organizations doing leadership and organizational development, as well as individual, team, and executive coaching. I have a Ph.D. in organizational consulting psychology, and I have worked with over 300 leaders on helping them be more effective in their own organizations.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I am Octavia Miller. I'm a third-year dental student at East Carolina University. I hold a master's degree in biomedical science from Berry University in Florida. And I'm super big on community engagement. I love to share and expose people to dentistry. I do so via social media platforms. I just can't wait to share with everyone and learn more about you all as well.
Thank you, everyone, for taking the time out to, again, to be a part of our community and being willing to share your stories on our platform today. Something that our show has adopted is going around every time we have a new guest or a new individual on our show, we would like to engage in like a community check-in. And so for us, it's basically saying, how are you? These are some difficult and challenging times that we are experiencing. And it's good to understand that whenever we're in community together, because we can help each other, and that's why we were put on earth. So for me, I'm doing fine. I'm excited about this opportunity to be here, but I'm also acknowledging that there are other things that I need to attend to. But my theme for this year is practicing being present in the moment and being intentional. So I'm making it my effort to show up as my best self, to give my full attention to the stories that you are going to share today. So I'm fine. I am complete.
Well, I'm fine too. I'm excited about some new things coming for me personally and professionally. But I'm also very well aware of the climate we're in as women and as a nation and globally as well. So I think it's important to have moments to check in to see where people are. As a psychologist, I value people understanding awareness and intentionality of checking in with people. So thank you for offering the platform to do so.
I agree, Mike. I love the check-in because we know it can change moment to moment. Right now, I'm doing really well. I just came off. We had a little vacation with my family, so it was a great reset and refresh, which I think I really needed. So that was welcomed. Yeah.
Hey, turn up for that vacation.
Oh, well, I promise I'm a super positive person, but right now I am struggling. I'm in the midst of studying for some board exams, so I'm running on like 4 hours of sleep each night, along with some of my other tasks, keeping up with patients, keeping up with social life, well, at minimum, and some other, business projects. So I feel like I'm in kind of superwoman mode where I'm just kind of doing it all and taking tasks one at a time. So I'm not okay in this moment, but I will be okay in 3 weeks. So it's fine.
Hey, thank you for acknowledging that. And thank you for being vulnerable and expressing that, because that's what we need to hear. Because oftentimes we see on social media, we see the glamour, the fame, and when everyone is okay, but no one really hears the stories about when I was not okay, but I still was able to push through and accomplish the goal that I had set for my life. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, and I actually share the same sentiment. I think just generally, I know personally I've got a lot going on. I just relocated to a whole new state. And so I already missed the train twice yesterday. So that's how things are going. But at the end of the day, blessed, highly favored, and just looking forward to this next journey in my career. So, but, you know, as Mike mentioned, with the whole purpose of today, we know each and every one of you have a story. And as we go through these questions, we really want to hear a lot more about you. And so we want to start off today's discussion around who's been the most impactful person in your life. If you can name one or two people that have really just made a big impact on your journey.
I'll go. My mother. My mother is no longer living, but my mother was a librarian for over 40 years. She went to college at a very young age, at the age of 15. She helped to integrate the school system where I grew up in Camden, Arkansas, and was admired by many, not just students, but community leaders. And she had a lot of confidence in me and my siblings. And she's the very reason I am Dr. Washington today. She was my editor for everything I wrote, from undergrad all the way through my PhD. So I'm grateful for her influence, her support, her love. And I miss her dearly, but I hope that I'm living in her legacy and continuing to make her proud.
I love that. What a great tribute to your mom. I would say that I have a particular coach that I remember as an athlete growing up. And this coach, they saw my potential and they believed in me before I believed in myself. And it was just such a great example of the impact one person can have by truly seeing you and expressing that and pushing you forward even when you weren't ready to be pushed.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes going with mom sounds like the cliche kind of answer. It's like, of course, your mom, yeah, but who else? But for me, it's honestly my mom as well. I'm a first generation college student, and she always just kind of pushed me to like do your best. I know in like elementary school and high school, if I got a B, she's like, a B, you can do better than that. Here I'm like, Mom, I did great. What do you mean? So sending me off to college, like neither one of us knew what we were doing. She didn't know. She was like, okay, I'm gonna send you and we're just gonna figure it out. So now that I'm pushing 30, an adult that's, experiencing real world things, I can truly appreciate the sacrifice that she made to, get me this far. And she always kind of had my back, whether I wanted to be a ditch digger. She's like, okay, you can do that, but you got to be the best one. And so now I'm like, okay, Mom, we're going to be a doctor. And she's like, okay, well, you're going to be the best one. Just let me know, what to do. And just having someone behind you that supports you and no matter what you do. I know there's been some nights I've called, I'm like, I want to drop out. And she's like, no, you can't do that. I'm not going to support that because we came too far now. But she's always like encouraged me. And there's just nothing like having that person behind you. So I truly, truly appreciate my mom.
Shout out to the moms out here. It sounds like they have been a positive inspiration in all of y'all lives. But I know for us as well, shout out to every mom. Dr. Washington, I know you say your mom is no longer with us, but shout out to them. Mother's Day is quickly approaching, and shout out to your moms. And I'm happy that y'all had someone to be able to have an inspiration over your life. So shout out to them. Going into question 2, what world or national events have significantly influenced your life?
That's a really good question. I would say that it's changed over my life in terms of where I was career-wise, and even as an individual. I think probably more than anything, more recent, I would say it's been centered around Black History Month. And I say that for many reasons, because I think it's really important to understand the significance of those who came before me as an African-American woman and to appreciate their struggle. but also their fortitude. It really has helped me to gain better perspective and appreciation for those who really laid it all on the line with not much to gain, but they were doing it for those who were to come. And so now I recognize my position and the importance of me doing the same thing. And so I just recently spoke for Black History Month at my institution. And it was really a well-received talk because I didn't really just run over just people we talk about all the time, but I talked about the significance and how people really can engage in Black History Month and the importance of why we talk about it and why it really is celebrated, not just in the US, but globally. So that would be the one that I would choose at this point in my life.
Dr. Washington, I like what you said about how it's changed over your life. I think what I've noticed with some of the recent events is, for me, each one of these events is an opportunity for reflection and for curiosity. Like trying to understand all sides of it, trying to hear all of the perspectives and grow in my own information and ensure that there's no holes or gaps in my understanding. And often I walk out of it with a completely different perspective than I came into it with as I learn more. And so that's really what's changed in me is as these events happen, I see them as opportunities for growth instead of opportunities to pick a side or opportunities to dig in my heels. It's an opportunity to open up and to grow and to learn because there's so much that I don't know. And so I think that that's what I've learned as I get older is there's so much more that I don't know than I do.
No, both of you just spoke on some really important points. And I know that as we, as we continue to grow in our careers, there's going to be points where we take those steps back and just reflect and look at one, of course, what has already occurred, but also how we pave it forward. With today's conversation, one of the biggest things, I know it's a topic that I know where I'm at, I know where Mike's at. It's about empowering and creating equal opportunities for women. And as you had just mentioned, as you're looking at the reflection points and you're looking at going forward, I know we're very curious. As you're moving along in your careers, how have you created opportunities to celebrate women, or how are you doing that currently?
That's a good question. I think Octavia mentioned earlier how she's really engaged in community. And I think that's really important. My community really helped to shape who I am, and I credit them a lot with my success. I think one of the things that I'm doing now that I'm really proud of, I'm a member of the Durham Compact Board in Durham, North Carolina, where I serve as the vice president. And this board was designed to really focus on inequities and inequalities of minorities, in particular minority women, in entrepreneurship and small business. And so I have a direct line to community leaders, government, and those who are really wanting to make an impact on the community. And so it's nice that I can give voice to those individuals and companies and really show how it's important that we get a community of people involved and not just a select few of people to highlight women, because there are some women doing some fantastic things, but they just don't have the platform. People are not aware. And I'm learning too. I think, Ashley, you talked about how you're learning. And so I'm learning things that I didn't know. And I like to think that I'm connected. And so it's really nice to see the hard work finally being recognized by many of these small business owners and minority women.
One of the most powerful things that I have found, and it goes right along with the community piece, is how can I connect other women with each other? So it's not connecting them to me, it's connecting two people that I know with each other. So two people that would never have crossed paths or that don't have any connection with each other. How can I be the facilitator of that connection? Because that's how we grow that community, right? That's how we broaden all of our networks. And so looking for those second and third order connections tends to be really powerful, because that, like I said, you're connecting people that would never have crossed paths on their own. But when you see those connections and give them an opportunity to talk about common interests or common projects that they're working on, those communities grow really quick.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of mentioned before, like I'm really big on social media and using that as a networking tool. And honestly, anytime I see a woman doing something good or just looking good or accomplishes something, I'm like the annoying, like commenting, yes, girl, do that. Because it's so important for people to know that you see them and you acknowledge what they're doing. So I'm like repost queen. Like I will just repost everything. They probably think I'm crazy because they're like, I don't know this girl. She keeps posting me on her page. I'm like, you're amazing. Like, I know you want to be like me. I want to be like you. And then in turn, like you do expose them to more people. And they're like, wow, this girl is doing that. Or there's been plenty of times people have called me like, hey, do you know someone over, at this university? I'm looking to do a tour there. I'm like, yeah, there's this girl on my Instagram. Let me find her real quick, But in just doing small, simple things like that, like you make a network and you make people feel really good about themselves. Even on the daily, I'm so intentional about complimenting people because we know we put a lot of work, into being decently looking, and you want someone to be like, yes, I like that. And not, just some guy being like, woo, hey girl, but, just someone else acknowledging like, I really like your shirt, and just something simple like that. Sometimes it makes my day, especially when I don't feel like I'm that put together. So just, being intentional and telling people what you see and what you admire about them, I think empowers people on the daily.
You just spoke on something that we actually want to follow up with, but has there ever been a moment, I know you said that there's been little moments where you felt empowered, Octavia, or there've been moments that you felt inspired, but has there ever been like an event or something where you took that step back and you were like, whoa, like this is what it's all about, or like, hey, this has really empowered me to, go and pave it forward for the next person, or go mentor, or, be more active in my community? Have you had any of those events that you'd like to share?
All the time, all the time. Maybe it starts with some of my mentors, some people that are like celebrity dentists, and I'm just a little baby dentist. I'm not even a whole dentist yet, and sometimes.
Come on now, no, you a dentist, you basically there. Come on now.
I got a year before I can claim the title. You can't do it. But when I think of myself as a small person, and then these people acknowledge me, and they call me or they pour into me, that makes me like, wow, like it's kind of the same thing that Ashley was saying, like you see things in me that I don't see in myself yet. And that makes me, in the next person start seeing those things. And I'm like, wow, like this is really, truly a thing. See some other examples of when I'm empowered. Let's say, for example, so I took my very first board exam last month. And the night before, I was asked to host or, be on a panel at my undergrad institution, which is also East Carolina. And it was the night before my board exam. And I'm like, you want me to come talk to these kids the night before my exam? But I'm a ball of nerves. I'm like, okay, let's do it. So, the night before, I'm speaking to a group of college kids, and I asked someone to come take pictures, just because social media. And in the moment, of course, I'm just talking normal stuff. I love talking to groups and public speaking. But when I looked at those photos and looked at the intent that those kids had in their eyes, looking at me and me looking at them and me sharing things, it made it all worth it. Fortunately, I passed my exam the next day. But if I failed, I would not have been upset about it because I did something that I loved, and I reached out to people and touched people and made connections in their lives, and it would have been well worth it.
Yeah, I tell you, I just want to highlight that. I felt that because coming from a small rural community, I think oftentimes we are, well, women, especially like yourself, are not given, they're not given the credit and the praises that they need in order to fill that community. So I just want to say I appreciate you for making that sacrifice, because I know some people would say, you know what, no, this is about me this weekend, I'm shutting off. But being able to find that balance of doing what you love to do, but also doing what you have to do in order to complete your program. So thank you so much for doing that. And
I
for
think
go ahead, Ashley. Go ahead. I
I
apologize.
was just going to say that, with so many things going on with the women's empowerment movement and all the things that have been happening recently, I'm just inspired by the conversations that are starting that are so long overdue and that should have been happening so long ago. And I hope that that gives a voice to so many more women's topics that can come up. Everything from, creating more space for women in workplace conversations, the pressures faced by working moms, miscarriages, menopause, the prevalence of relationship abuse. Like, there's so many more topics that deserve our attention. And that's what I'm inspired, is just to keep the conversation going so that we don't stop where we are. It continues to grow.
And Ash, I have a follow-up question for you. You mentioned let's keep allowing the conversations to continue. I wonder, what are some ways that you have seen to be effective where those conversations can continue to grow in like workplace settings? An example, I ask this question because, oftentimes women feel like they have no voice from my experience. So how do they find the courage to have those conversations, and what does that look like? I know it may vary depending on setting, but I'm curious based off your experience.
Yeah. There's lots of opportunities. I think often it starts with a courageous leader who helps carve out that space, who says, hold on, we haven't heard from everybody at the table yet, or we're not going to make this decision until we hear from this woman or this minority or this person who's on a teleconference a million miles away across the world. Right? We can't make these decisions without hearing all the voices, because all of the voices. And so creating that space where everybody feels like they have an opportunity to speak and to share their ideas, and then celebrating with them when they're shared. We know that women often have to repeat their ideas more than once for the group to hear them. Whereas men, their ideas are heard the first time and they're reinforced by the group. And so as women and our advocates and our male colleagues, how can you help reinforce and elevate those voices on the first time they share their idea? Right? How can we say, wow, I really love that idea. Can you say that louder? Can you say it for the folks in the back, right? We need to amplify those voices and not wait for a male counterpart to repeat the same idea and then take the credit.
You made a really good point, Ashley. And what I want to ask next is more so, and you kind of just hinted on it, but how can we hold the men accountable, right? Like, we know that there has to be more leaders. We also know that there needs to be more people in place to actually speak up. But like, what is your call to action for the men who are listening and the folks that are going to be listening to this? Because at the end of the day, our platform is all about pushing it forward, moving it forward, making change. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah. For me, it comes back to each and every one of us has a unique contribution that only we can make, right? It's different because of my background, my experiences, my education make me uniquely me, and the same for everyone else. And so for men, if they can help us realize that those women's unique contributions are just as important as men's. They're very different, and that's okay. But they're just as valuable and they're just as important. And so those unique ideas, those unique thought processes, they are different. And that's a good thing. That's why we want to hear them, is because that they haven't been in the room for so long.
Thank you for sharing, Ashley. Would anyone else like to speak on those two questions that were just asked? Okay, cool. All right, cool. I like to give 10-second pauses before I go move on to the next thing. So while I do see the awkwardness on everyone's face as a counselor, it's just like a good counseling technique to practice, allow silence, because sometimes people do say some things that are profound, or sometimes people say some things that are like, I never thought of it like that. Let me allow that to sizzle in my spirit to see how that what about what she just said, or what about this topic is causing me to be silent right now. And so that is perfectly fine. And so no pressure to anyone. But again, Ashley, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and opinions towards that. And I know as we are approaching the conversation of equity and equality in the workplace, and looking at how we can do a better job with addressing different cultural issues as it relates to the background of gender equity and also the gender pay gap. How would any of you address that, either in your current workplace or also in a role of advocating for other women and encouraging them to say something or speak out?
I'll take this question. I think it's a conversation that I hate that we could continue to have. It's been going on for so many decades, but we're still having it. And I think it's important that we acknowledge that we're still having to have this conversation. I noticed one of the things that I'm seeing more of is celebrities are really engaging in this conversation and offering a platform as well as support for women. I know Venus Williams, as well as Serena Williams, both have really initiated some really neat ideas here recently around pay equity. And they're really working to broaden the narrative as well as bring greater awareness as to why we still have this conversation year after year. And so I think it's important that more people are speaking up who have a national and global platform, and that they're expanding the reach to other agencies who are doing similar work, but may not have the platform. So it's nice for those networks to connect and make the conversation broader. And hopefully that will help to make change. I know change is slow, and we know it's been very slow in this area. And I'm hoping, just not only for myself as a female, but just for equity in general. It's so important because people need to be acknowledged and treated fairly for their efforts and their work. And we need to really continue to make it known that there's still an issue there.
Absolutely. And, some of the issue stems from very systemic things that have been long in the making. Right? And many of those things, although this has been an ongoing conversation, we still don't talk about. Right? We still don't talk about that outdated stigma of a woman being labeled as aggressive if they're fighting for equal pay or equal notoriety. We still don't talk about the unequal mental load that women take on and how that affects their ability to perform equal work. We don't talk about that division of labor between home life and work life and those expectations, especially of our working mothers. We don't talk about the desire of some men to want to keep the pay gap because of the power differential that creates. Right? So there's so much more to this conversation that's a few levels below the surface that we haven't quite gotten to yet. We hear people saying, talk about your pay, right? Make it more visible. That's part of it, but so are all these other layers that we haven't quite gotten to yet.
That's a good point. Now, in terms of progresses, though, where have y'all seen changes? Have you seen whether it's the companies or groups that you're a part of actually having these conversations? Because I know where I'm at, this is a conversation that we have on a weekly basis, and people get involved, which is fantastic. But I also know that not everybody's taking part in these conversations. So in the places that y'all show up, have there been progresses? Have there been these types of conversations so that way we are moving the needle?
Very important question, Josh. I think the conversations are not always privy to everyone. They're often very siloed. You're absolutely right. I know in higher education, this is a conversation that's held at the C-suite primarily. And so that brings a lot of challenges at the faculty level and even at the staff level. So you have things such as your faculty senate, your staff senate, who really are the voices and the platform. Even with those things, the conversation is still very limited. access to the decision makers is virtually little to none. It's a few select people who really engage in this conversation and who really have the power to make the changes. So higher education is struggling with this one. And I think we could maybe take note from what's happening in the professional sports world, in tennis, women's soccer. So we have some great examples to build from and to help catapult in higher ed and maybe in some other areas. But it's a conversation that needs to broaden in higher education for progress to really happen.
Any other thoughts?
And so I'll just say a little. Of course, I am still unemployed, still a student, so I don't really have a true foot in the race or anything. But in my world, in my dental school world, I have a mentor, and she has this plaque on her like wall, and it says, "Be so good that they can't ignore you." And I take that so literal. I'm sure that they're in Hollywood, there are great women actresses and they still don't get paid as much. And I totally understand that. But kind of my thoughts and my feels now as I'm kind of starting to look for jobs is that I'm going to be so good that you can't, ignore what I bring to any practice or what I bring to any community. And you're going to have to pay me, because if you don't, the next, person or company will. So sometimes kind of what Ashley was saying, that women have these ideas and, no one hears them or they fall on deaf ears. And then a guy repeats the same thing you just said. And you're like, I just said that, so now that, I do so much, I'm not just a student, by far not just a student. And I think my faculty and staff, they see that. So when they have opportunities, I'm the first person they call, or they say, hey, this and this is going on across the country. We're going to send Octavia because we already know she's going to show up. She's going to represent us well. So I feel like, no, I'm not getting paid for it, but they acknowledge and see what I'm doing, that it can't be ignored. And I'm kind of reaping those benefits of just being myself and being good at what I do.
Thank you to the both of you for sharing, as that acknowledgement is very important, because it kind of leads into the next question that I want to ask. How have any one of you overcame any obstacles in the field where it was male dominated?
I'll take that. As a psychologist in industrial organizational psychology, it is male dominated. There are very few women, and certainly even smaller proportion of women of color. So the way that I've navigated being in this discipline is to have what I call a trusted board of advisors. And those include having mentors, sponsors, and coaches. And they all have a different role. And a part of my board of advisors is also my family members. So I have people who are directly in IO psychology and know the business, know how to navigate the terrain. And then I have other people who know how to develop my professional skill sets, how to help me network, how to help me build my brand and set my legacy so that my work can be recognized. And I don't have to jump through all these hoops and beg people to recognize my work and my value. And the other piece is having those mentors and coaches that help to support my self-confidence and keep me encouraged and motivated to keep doing the good things that I'm doing, even to challenge me in areas where I need to grow that I haven't considered growth. All those things have really helped me to keep my foot pretty solid in terms of growth. I had a moment where I stalled and I didn't do much at all. And thanks to those board of advisors, they kept pushing me, saying, hey, you can't just sit down. You have to keep going, because this journey has not always been easy. And without those persons in my life, I don't know that I would have made some of the progression that I've made, and I still have a ways to go. But I'm grateful that I have those people who are knowledgeable and who want to commit to investing in me personally and professionally. So I think you have to find those people who want to do those things for you. And really, when you have those people, you should be very grateful. And then it allows me to pay it forward to someone else as I go forward.
I love that. And you are so blessed to have such a great set of advisors surrounding you. And that is so, so important. And I would just add to that, it's also so, so important for each one of us to believe in ourselves, right? Continue to show up, continue to know your value. I do a lot of 360-degree feedbacks, and that's where folks get feedback from people above them in the organization, below them in the organization, next to them in the organization. And what I often see when reviewing women's 360-degree feedback is that they have scored themselves the lowest. So everyone around them is giving them credit, but they're not giving themselves credit. And so that's how you continue to overcome these obstacles, is you've got to believe in yourself. When you show up in a room and you look around, you're the only woman or you're the only minority in the room, believe that you deserve to be there just as much as everybody else. You have to push yourself forward and believe that. Everybody else might already, they might not, it doesn't really matter, but you have to believe that in yourself, because that's going to impact your presence, that's going to impact your delivery, that's going to impact your message. So that's the first piece, is to believe in yourself.
Dr. Washington and Ashley literally just nailed it. Like, just having those friends, that day you get kicked down, someone didn't listen to you or something didn't go right. You really internalize that. You get beat down. And so you go home, and I'm a crier. I will cry about anything. And, having those friends are like, okay, girl, we're going to cry tonight. We'll eat ice cream on the couch. And then tomorrow we are going to be boss ladies and we're going to figure it out. Just having that is amazing in itself. And I think something for me is that I found myself almost silencing myself sometimes when I knew I was right, because I was like, no one's going to listen. Or if I do say something or speak out, they don't call me a B word, and I have to push through myself and say, you know what, I'm right. And what I'm saying is impactful, and someone needs, whatever idea that I have right now. And if they call me a B word, it's okay, because the greater benefit of what I'm adding to this conversation outweighs that one person's little mind or what they think of me. And so you have to get out of your own head and push through, that one obstacle, because what you have to say is important. And once you convince yourself of that, it's smooth sailing from there, no matter what anyone else thinks.
Hey, thank you everyone for sharing their perspective. And Ashley, something I want to acknowledge that you mentioned was you have to believe. Something I've been learning about is mind trash. A lot of us do have mind trash. And for women, when you have been told this your whole entire life, and where you have to, your voice is basically silent because of the majority. While I understand you have to believe, but also you have to have that support group, because if you don't have that support group to uplift you, to motivate you, to believe in you, and to help you believe in yourself, especially when you have been traumatized or faced with abuse, where it was verbally, physically, emotionally, mentally, then without that mind trash stays, and you will not be able to, well, it's going to be harder. I'm not going to say you won't be able to. It's going to be harder to overcome that without the proper resources, because the world we live in, it's not an easy world. And so it takes a lot of support for self-efficacy, and also understanding the importance of community, that we thrive off of other people. That's why we're here on earth together. So thank you so much for acknowledging that, but I couldn't allow us to move to the next question without helping other people to understand the importance of getting rid of that mind trash that we have about, no, I can't do this because of this. Maybe it's the way you think, and we may have to readjust that to accomplish that particular goal, but anything can be possible. So thank you. It takes me to the next question that we have for you today. What would you change about the assumptions made by men of women?
Well, I think it really speaks to Ashley's comment previously is the confidence level, just the belief. My mother used to say to us, the mind can conceive it and the heart, then, the heart believes it, then you can achieve it. So you really have to have that presence, have that confidence, and to speak up, not be afraid to speak up, not be afraid to disagree, not be afraid to challenge, and to show that your work and my work and others is just as valuable. Oftentimes, women have even greater ideas. If you're looking at the literature right now and women and how they've led during this pandemic, women leaders have by far surpassed male leaders in success of managing crises, and certainly in this unknown of a pandemic that we're still in. So having those examples to showcase the power of women, the success of women, the ability, I think I will have a lot of examples to say, hey, look at me, look at all these other women, look at what has changed as a result of what women have brought forth in leadership. I think that's what I would use as my platform to get men to really change their paradigm and how they look and view women, and certainly in leadership.
And I think just to echo that, how do you challenge those assumptions, even if it's one-on-one, when you have an opportunity to just ask some really thought-provoking questions and challenge the thinking a little bit? I had a colleague in a meeting who turned to a male colleague and said, "That's an interesting question. I wonder if you would ask that of a male." And everybody in the room stopped because we knew the answer, right? Of course, they wouldn't have asked that question of a male. It's only okay to ask women those questions. And I'm not saying to do that in every scenario, but in those well-placed questions, how can you help people think differently? Right?
Yeah, I think by showing up and doing the work, of course, we change those assumptions by men. In my example, just yesterday, and I kind of reflected on this all night. Of course, in my dental world, I was extracting about 15 teeth on someone, and I had a male partner, and we kind of usually would share, the load, and so we all get experience. And after a while, he's like, "Oh, you can just kind of do the front ones because those are easier, and I'll do this or I'll do that." And I was like, No, I can handle it actually. I actually want to time myself and see, if I can get all these out, on my own, whatever. But being a good person, I, shared the load with him. And me, first tooth is out in 8 minutes. I'm rocking, I'm rolling, I'm doing it. And I was like, I can keep going if you want. He's like, "No, I'm gonna do these real quick, and so he takes like an hour to get 3 teeth out, and we're like short on time. Like, everyone wants to leave Friday on 5 o'clock. So I'm like, let me just help you out a little bit so we can get out of here and get this patient, with her mouth closed somewhere. And so by the end of it, he was like, "I learned so much from you. I thought," and he's really muscular too. So he's like, "I thought that you weren't really going to be able to do it, but you taught me a lot and you showed me some new techniques." And I'm like, "Yeah, you don't really have to have a lot of muscle to pull teeth out. It's more, a technique." But it was just kind of his assumption. We had never worked together. I'm a cute little person. So you assume that I don't like the blood and guts and all that. And I'm like, yeah, like the bloodier, the better, whatever. But in me having that confidence in myself and the ability to actually do it, I think I did earn his respect, in that realm of things. And so that's an assumption, at least of that one person, that I was able to change. And so I'm sure, he'll go on to some friends and be like, "Octavia is a beast at pulling out teeth." And so I hope that kind of goes down the line and they start thinking that same thing about other women, in our class or in our field, to not hold them to a standard that they can't do the same things because they don't have the same musculature.
That's wow. Yeah. That is the, I mean, all of the answers were fantastic. The common theme that I thought I heard across the board was not only just empowerment and believing that you can, but knowing that like, I got this. So I'm curious from each and every one of you. I know we talked about folks who've been instrumental in your life, but want to take a step back and frame it just for you. If you could go back and talk to your younger self or speak to your younger self, what advice would you give them, knowing what you know in your careers and of course where you're headed and everything that's going on?
A couple of things. Number one, the journey is not linear. Number two, have some fun along the way. Allow yourself some grace to make mistakes, to fail. Value time with family and friends, and make sure you're always clear on why you're doing what you're doing. Is it really what you want to do and not for someone else? And then reminding yourself of what's the outcome? Where is my impact? And what will this leave for my legacy?
Dr. Washington, I love the give yourself grace. I think that's really hard for so many women. We're very, very hard on ourselves, and we forget that it's okay to be human. The other thing that I would say is add yourself to the list. As women, we're so great at taking care of everybody else and all of our to-do lists and all the people that we're caring for and helping, and we forget to add ourselves to that list. And we don't always have to be at the top. It doesn't have to be an arrogant or inauthentic thing, but don't leave yourself off the list, because then you can't help everybody else if you're so worn out, overworked, exhausted, burnt out.
Love it. You ladies like just embody everything that I love about women in general. For me, I would tell my younger self to never take no for an answer. I felt like I probably would have been some other places now if I didn't settle for whatever someone told me, if I would have kept fighting for something. So never take no for an answer. I wish my younger self knew to open my mouth. My mom would always say, you have not because you ask not. And I think we kind of have all this pride sometimes that we can do it ourselves. But once I learned that I could ask for help, and there are people that want to help you, that made a huge difference in my life and in my career track. So definitely open your mouth and say what you need, and it will come to you in one way or another. And again, I would tell myself to give yourself some grace, so especially us, we're in these fields where we are kind of the overachievers. And we can't beat ourselves up all the time. And my very last point, and it's something that resonates with me on the daily now, is to also lift as you climb. Yeah, and I wish I knew that a lot earlier, where I have some friends, or family back home that are not at this level. But if I would have kind of just thought more of how can I encourage this person to also come to college with me, or also do something, we would have a greater impact collectively. So now that's why I'm super big on like, yeah, become a dentist because we need you, or just do something that makes you feel good and it's impactful. So lift as you climb every step of the way.
Lift as you climb. We love it. We love it. We're moving into the conclusion of this segment. I know many of our audience are going to want to keep up with y'all, or get in contact with you. So if folks want to reach out or connect with you, how can people get in contact with you?
Well, I can be reached via email at cewashington@me.com. And I also have a platform on LinkedIn as well. So that's where you're likely to find me most often. So feel free to reach out and connect. And thank you for asking the question.
Wonderful. Same here. LinkedIn is probably my primary place for contact. And you can reach me via email at ashley.seeley@excellence-advantage.com.
And you can find me on social media, mostly on Instagram, but Facebook as well at Dr. Octavia. And that's doctor, like the whole word, not just DR. Dr. Octavia on Instagram, Facebook, I think YouTube, TikTok, all of those. Whatever you are, I'm there probably. And LinkedIn as well for professional engagement.
Wow. Well, I want to say thank y'all so much for taking the opportunity to just be in community with Josh and myself. I thoroughly enjoy our conversation and our time together. As a male who has privilege, whether unearned and earned privilege as well, I acknowledge a lot of the conversations that we had today, and I will utilize my voice to continue to advocate for women, but also to help educate women and connected them to resources to be able to get the support that they need to be able to use their voice. Something that I love that stuck out to me, Octavia, is lift as you climb. That resonated with me because oftentimes we are so focused. I know I am so focused on trying to get to the top where I'm not necessarily moving because I'm not lifting as I climb. And I'm just worried about getting to that goal, looking at what's next and getting to the next goal. And that alone resonated with me. And I want to say thank you so much for one, taking the time to be with us, two, educating us, and three, just being great. Like without y'all, without a woman, there would be no me. And I have to acknowledge that. And like I said, we celebrate women 365 days a week, 366 during the leap year. And because of y'all, our audience will be fed. And because of them being fed, changes will continue to happen within our space, within our communities, and across the global world. So we love you. We hope you have enjoyed the time with us together. But most importantly, it's the power of a growth mindset, and it all starts with you.